Do you find yourself replaying scenarios in your head that have already happened? Do you find yourself regurgitating and reanalyzing and rethinking things that have already passed, events that have already happened? If the answer is yes, then you know what rumination is. And we're going to talk about this in today's video. And we're going to make a connection with the tarot. If you like psychology, if you're interested in the tarot, and if you like ASMR, you're going to like my channel. So I recommend that you subscribe. Alright, so rumination. I chose the Nine of Swords to illustrate this concept of rumination. This might not be the best illustration of it, but I don't have the Rider-Waite with me at the moment, so I cannot show you. But if you run a quick Google search on the Rider-Waite Tarot and the Nine of Swords, you're going to see that there's a person laying in bed or sitting up in bed. It's obviously nighttime and they cannot sleep, and their face is covered by their hands and they seem to be in distress. Nighttime is very often when rumination happens for people because there are not that many distractions and it's easier to get into those internal dynamics of endless rumination. So what we're seeing here in this card is the binding effect of this sort of thinking, how it limits your potential and how it essentially locks you to a past, an interpretation of the past rather, that you have almost no power over. So when you ruminate, when you go over the details of your life, of your past, and you do it in sort of an obsessive fashion, what you're doing is essentially you're giving the present away. You're surrendering your power that would be available to you in the present. And essentially, what we need to understand here about rumination and negative thinking in general is that there's a very good reason why our brains are wired to remember, to analyze, and to store negative experiences. There's a preference for remembering negative events, and there's an evolutionary explanation for that. It has to do with learning. So when you're in a dangerous situation and you survive, it is obviously extremely valuable to store the memory of the event and to keep reminding yourself of it as a way of ingraining the lesson that you've learned. Now, this is obviously a very useful feature when you're living in the savannah, or when you're, an animal that could be become prey at any moment. But as a human being who's living in a modern world where you have a lot of options to make sure that you're safe physically, and also a lot of more productive options to make sure that you are safe mentally, this same feature becomes a bug. It becomes something that makes life difficult to live. It becomes a problem. So rumination, it comes from something, a very clearly practical thing that used to be relevant. And it could be relevant to a certain degree, even in modern times, but not to the degree where it impairs your functioning. And what we need to see with rumination and the Nine of Swords is that there's an element of choice here. Even if the question of free will is obviously a decisive or divisive one, rather. Well, as far as I understand, there's a decisive consensus that free will, in the layman's terms, what we consider to be free will, does not exist. So there's that. But I still believe that there's an element of choice with the Nine of Swords, where if you consciously recognize and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it in the first place, you're trying to teach yourself, you're trying to understand the situation, you're trying to process, work through something that seems significant and is potentially significant on some level. But the way to work through it is not by running these circles around it, because I think rumination has this aspect of it being self-serving somewhat, it being purposeless. So when you notice that you're doing this, notice the need for processing, notice the need for learning. And a really good way to circumvent the negative ramifications of rumination, to stop the whole process altogether, is writing. Or you can make sound recordings, or you can take a video of yourself, but in some way externalizing the process of going around and around and around the same subject. It alleviates the need or the pain of having to revisit the same problem again and again and again, because what is stored within your memory now, after you've put it out there, it's stored externally. So a good way to stop ruminating is to express and to put it in tangible form that you can then read or watch or listen to. And it's very interesting how that happens, and I really recommend that you try it and see if it works for you. But when you do that, when you eliminate the need to replay the same thing, the same ideas again and again, it makes you feel so much better. And it creates new insights when you take to writing or expressing your thoughts in some other way. And then you can have the conclusion, you can have the revelation, the insight that you've been looking for in the first place. But if it continues to happen internally, and at the worst times, for example, when you're trying to go to sleep, then you're never gonna get what you are trying to get. I hope that you found this reading interesting or useful. I encourage you to check back in every Wednesday, every Sunday. I release a new video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. I love reading your comments. Thank you. Bye-bye.